prisoners of war used to come every day, and they had an escort with them who used to sit in the back of the farm cart when they were carting out backwards and forwards to the fields with a gun. And as kids, I mean, although I can remember it, it didn't seem that odd to us because it had always happened.
Down our road in Phil Place, at the end, they had a little. Have you seen pictures of the barrage balloons?
Yeah.
Well, but they also had little ones.
Okay.
Sort of with little fishtails on little spiky bits, you know, like a shark's fin.
Yeah.
And they were for low-flying aircraft.
Okay.
And then we had one in Phil Place on a spare plot of land, which was just anchored to the ground. They didn't have a team. It wasn't sort of a big one.
Yeah.
They just had this team.
You mentioned the radio.
Yeah, our radio was very important.
Yeah,
workers' playtime was the big thing. I've just remembered that, but that was workers' playtime that came out at midday. And they had, so that was important.
So was that more entertainment, or was it also for updates on what was going on?
That was entertainment.
Yeah.
We'd go to the cinemas during the war.
Yes.
The important thing then was, you didn't like now, you wait for the start of a film, you'd walk into the cinema, a film would be, and you wait till it came to that part again, and then you walk out. But there was newsreels, Pathé, and you get your information from Pathé News, and the things they used to show you, they'd show you things, and don't forget, there's no restriction on ages and kids going to the cinema, but I mean, I've seen, as a young kid during the war, in all fairness, British soldiers using a flamethrower on Germans getting out of a bloody tank, setting them alight.
Yeah.
So you'd get horrendous things like that, and of course they would always exaggerate how well we were doing. And then you'd live through this. At the beginning, you'd get air raid warning. You can go out. In the end, you just sat through it. Very few people left when you're in a cinema and there was an air raid warning.
We were always a card playing, so I think we more likely played cards, or we did get comics during the war, Beano Dandy, that sort of thing, Rupert Bear. I don't know, pencil and paper.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do jigsaws, but you couldn't do those down in the air raid shelter. I don't know, really. I had a doll's pram, but didn't use it for my dolls. We used to dress up the cat and wander around the garden.
For my parents, particularly my mother, it must have been quite stressful because I said she was an area warden, but she had a husband in London, a daughter working in London, who she was a secretary, and another daughter going by train to Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And very often there were bombs on the line, and there are no mobile phones, so she didn't know what was happening. Could be anything.
To be honest with you, people didn't talk about things like that very much. You went in your shelters, you came out, and that was it.
Yeah.
I think most probably people were more protective of young people, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it was an adventure. We were allowed so much freedom that the kids don't have now. You know, you go out, you go to bomb sites, you do things. Kids are so well protected now. It's all wrong. They don't learn.
And then one day, as I've said in this one, we went to our favourite park, to have a walk around. And we met all these soldiers arriving. And that was something that really stayed in our memories. It was horrifying. Yeah, they were sort of shuffling along, like this, and half of it, which is what makes me so cross when you get war films. I don't see war films. I'm too critical. You'll get somebody coming away from Dunkirk with his hat on and his boots all dry. No, never. Bare feet, nothing feet, or rags wrapped round their feet and barely able to move, and we were all horrified. That was Dunkirk.
And was that, would you say, one of the first times that you kind of
come into contact with things like that? Yes, really.
Yeah. And how did that make you feel? Was that...
Well, we were all horrified,
The first air raid. Well, when planes went over, you looked up and you say, "Is it one of ours?" That was quite a big saying.
And the other thing that I remember was, I suppose I was about 4 or perhaps coming up 5. We watched dogfights over the reservoirs, and the planes were amazing, sort of diving in and out. And one of them was shot down, and we all cheered. But when I think about it now, we all cheered, but we didn't know whether it was a German being shot down or one of our own, because as kids we never found out. I don't know that we really listened to the news even. And of course there was no television.
Well, there was one occasion when there was the main line, from Waterloo was bombed, or there might have been a bomb on the line. I don't know, but we had to be trying altered to come round via Chertsey. The other line that goes up via Reading. Virginia Water, that line. It still goes up to Waterloo, but it does a sort of circle, And that was all right, and we came back on that. But I said, my mother couldn't know. There was no mobile phone, no.
Do you ever remember coming back and her being worried or...
No, I think she was always very calm. But you must have been very worried. I said I wouldn't realise that until I was a mother myself, how you could be worried about your children. We just took it as for granted. We just got on with it.
No, you'd hear the bangs and think, how close is that? That's it. You got on. Believe it or not, you got pretty savvy. You just took life as it came. I can't remember being particularly frightened, apart from the one time I threw myself on the ground, then realised it was more interesting watching the dogfight and watching these doodlebugs go over. That was quite regular. You'd watch these. The landmines were a bit of a worry, I must admit. So it was a good job the war started coming to an end after that. That could have demoralised us quite badly.
When we were taken out shopping, put in the pushchair, if there had been a bomb, say in Queen's Road, Mum would take us up King's Road, so we didn't have to pass the devastation. It was only when the devastation was clear that we were taken past the bomb buildings. And what you would see were people's belongings still on the mantelpiece. All the house had gone, and there would be the mantelpiece and the mirror above the mantelpiece and the picture hanging skewed sideways and perhaps a bit of curtain hanging down. And what you were confronted with, even fairly close after a raid, was a smell of bomb site. Now the best smell of bomb site is quite something, because what you have is pitch pine, which is very resinous. you have lead which is burnt, plaster which is burnt, bricks which is burnt, and even when that has been damped down, there was this awful smell which made your eye sting. And it's particular, the smell of bomb site is particular smell, it's very acrid.